So everything you need to know about lobsters. Well, I'm not going to tell you how to catch them. People are still trying to figure that out. But for most of us, we don't need to know how to catch them. We need to know how to go get them and cook them at home. So here they are. We got a whole bunch. Chris is over there cleaning up the kitchen, or as we like to say, the galley. But here are our lobsters. Got some water boiling here. We don't have a pot big enough for the stove. We've got 10 lobsters for 5 guys, so we don't have a pot to cook them all at once. That's all right. We're gonna do them my way, so it only takes about 14 to 16 minutes a piece. But while I get them, let me show you a couple things. This right here, if you notice, it's a little bit different than this one. Looks maybe a little bit smaller. But there's a couple things we can tell right from the start. This is a male and this is a female. One of the reasons you can tell is you see how this right here is thin and this is kind of splayed out like that. That's so that she can hold her eggs in there. And this young buck here doesn't need to. Another thing you can do is you can turn this over and you can see these right here. You see these 2 marks right here? These 2, whatever those things are, we have unmentionables. If you look at the female version, put it under the light here, you can see she just has two little hairs, as opposed to these things are all solid and hard. So those are things that you can sex a lobster about, if you didn't know which is which. Another thing that you can look at is this right here doesn't count, but on the corner flippers, I'm not a lobsterman, it's been 30 years since I've done any lobstering, but we notch out, I want to say it's this side, I'm not sure, it could be this side, but it's one of these 2 flippers, not the outside ones, not the middle, but we put a notch in there, and that means that if we see one with eggs in it, we put a notch right there, and then we put it back, and that means that we know that she's a proven productive breeder, and so that's how they keep the stocks up. So that's it. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting water, we're bringing it to a boil. Now what some people do is they boil lobsters in the water. And that might be good if you're looking for lobster stew, lobster soup, bisque. But we're looking for steamed lobster. We want the hot steam to cook the lobster. And there's a couple schools of thoughts on this. Some people like to do it with salt water, some people like to put salt in fresh water, and some people like to do it in fresh water. A lot of people think the salt has to do with flavoring it, but I believe the real reason why people want to use salt, or they add salt to the water, is to actually raise the temperature. Water, as you know, at sea level will boil at 212 degrees. By adding salt to that, that temperature gets higher and you'll be able to flash cook the lobster a little faster. Personally, I've tried a whole bunch of things. My favorite thing is just to do it in fresh water. Makes the lobster, what I think, tastes a little sweeter. These are going to be sweet anyway because Jimmy has fresh lobsters. They probably got caught this morning, and unlike those ones that you buy at the supermarket that have probably been eating off of their insides of their own body for the last 6 months in a tank somewhere. These guys have been ready to go. So what we're going to do, we get a rolling boil so that there's tons of steam coming out of this thing. I'm going to pull out 5 lobsters. I'm going to try to set up the camera so you can watch me. And I want to take off the rubber bands. You gotta be careful, because if these things grab a hold of you, they're pretty feisty and they could do some damage. But we're gonna put the 5 lobsters in here. We're gonna try to get the cover on them and get the first thing rolling, set the timer, say 14 to 16 minutes, and I'll show you a little trick of how you can figure out whether the lobster's done on the inside or not. But anyway, let me do that. So I'm gonna set up the camera now. I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put this thing. All right, let's try this. So, first thing I want to do is make sure I have enough lobsters out. Then, Taking off their rubber bands isn't required, but my Portuguese captain used to give me a hard time, even when I'd post pictures of me cooking them with the rubber band still on. He goes, "You don't eat the rubber bands, take the rubber bands off." So, in the idea that we're steaming the lobsters, we don't want to steam the rubber bands, we'll take them out. Oh, another thing I haven't showed you. If you look, we've got a right-handed and a left-handed lobster. See the difference? This is a crusher claw and this is the cutter claw. And if you notice, he's got the cutter claw on this side and the crusher on this side. So lobsters too have right-handed lobsters and left-handed lobsters. All the lobster facts you never knew about, coming from some kid who grew up with nothing to do on Mohegan Island but look at a damn lobster. But growing up on Mohegan didn't keep me from liking lobsters any less, I'll tell you that. We did, growing up, I remember we used to say that hot dogs cost a lot more, and it was quite accurate that in the general store hot dogs cost more than lobsters did. But I still love lobster. I could eat lobster every day. Okay, this goes a little bigger than the rest. Oh, get a nice seal on there. Alright, and we send them into their doom, but that's going to help us out later. Throw these rubber bands out. And I want to set my phone. Well, maybe I have a cooking timer over here. I guess no timer. We're going to put it for 15 minutes. There we go. Alright, so that's it. We're going to come back in a little while. We'll see how these guys steam up. Stick around. Okay, so it's been a little while now, and so we need to test these, and I'll show you a little trick of how you can see. Take this off, melting a little butter over here. So with this steam and not having a lot of heat here, we know that like the foam that boiled up like this and got about here, but we don't even know if the top got all the way done. So one of the things that you can test is you can get the antennas and you can pull on it. Now see that? If it comes all the way off, that means it's done. If it's not done, it'll break off right here. So that means we're good to go. So we gotta put round 2 in here, so round 1 will come out. Look at those beautiful babies. No shell disease. Oh, Jimmy hooked us up. All right. Now we get the next batch of victims. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to tell me I shouldn't say that. Oh, this guy's a little, getting a little snarky with me. It's all right. I think I won the final argument. When I was a kid, nobody had any of these rubber bands. When you'd lobster, you'd have something called a lobster peg. That was a little piece of wood they put in the joint right here that would immobilize the pincer. But that was a long time ago. Another interesting, fun lobster fact for you guys. Up north, Gulf of Maine, in the winter, especially where I grew up, when I was living on Mohegan, their lobster season ran from January 1st to June 25th. Whoa, I almost got bit. This guy's really lively. Yeah, so they would be fishing all winter long. And they did that for a bunch of reasons, but they were one of the only places, I think to this day, other than Canada, they're one of the only places that has a set lobster season. And so when they were fishing in the winter, it wouldn't be uncommon that it might be 0 degrees out, but the water might be, you know, 50, no, I mean, I don't know, 30 some degrees. Of course, 27, after 27 it starts to freeze. Salt water does anyway. So what happens, let me just set this timer before I forget. Oops, that's wrong. Okay, so like I was saying, when the water obviously be cold if you fell into the ocean in the middle of January off of Monhegan. But the difference between the temperature of the water and the temperature of the air is much colder at that level. So a lot of the lobsters will go out into deep water and try to kind of take the winter off. It's their version of going to Florida for the winter. Well, anyway, they go out to dinner and somebody from Monhegan will catch them up, and when they get hauled up, the trap comes out, they go in and you grab the lobsters, and it might, like I say, when it's really cold out, the lobsters are in such shock because they've gone from, you know, maybe a 30 or 40 degree difference from, say, 30 degree water to, say, you know, 0 degrees above. So when you reach into the trap and grab them, the lobsters get scared. They have the ability to shoot each of their claws. They can drop their claws off. So, and they do that so that if they're fighting with somebody and somebody snatches their claw, instead of getting, you know, if a fish or, you know, some fish was starting to eat them or they were fighting with somebody, they could just drop a claw off and try to get away. So that's one of their defense mechanisms. That's that. Once again, have a look at what we've got. Doesn't it look great? All right. So traditionally, lobster, when I say traditionally, I mean in my house, we usually serve lobster with an ear of corn and a couple small red potatoes and even maybe a bag of those little teeny onions. When we do a lobster bake, that's where we do this all outside. We'll put all this together. Sometimes we'll get a breakfast sausage and roll a piece of flounder around it and put it in a paper bag, and that gets steamed. And oh, that's one of my favorite parts of a lobster bake. But anyway, traditionally when you're eating lobster in the house or on the tugboat, as it is today, we usually have it with corn and maybe a boiled potato, just start to boil over here. Some potato chips and beer. Now this is the problem. Obviously we can't have beer on the boat, and for those of you that have been watching or saw some of our shipyard videos, you'll know that my engineer forbids us to eat corn on the cob on the boat. So we're really sad that we have no corn on the cob to have with our lobsters. If anyone doesn't know why my engineer won't let us eat corn on the cob, write us in the comments and let us know. But anyway, that's it. We got some butter going over here. Oh, and what you haven't seen, check this out. My AB crisp from scratch. Look at this. Oh, mac and cheese for lobster mac and cheese. And my mate, the skinniest guy on the boat, loves to cook stuff. He can't eat any of this, but he cooks it just to make the rest of us fatter. Awesome cookies. Anyway, that's it. Hope you learned something about lobsters. Hopefully it was fun. Thank you so much. Remember, it's not a cooking channel, just a fun day on the tugboat. Please like and subscribe. Thank you again to my awesome patrons, head over to patreon.com if you're interested in supporting these videos. Thank you so much.